What is happening, and welcome to another Photography Talk episode. And friends, today, well, we're going to be talking about a lens. We're going to be talking about this lens right here, the 14-35 Canon f4L series wide angle of a beast. And friends, I've been testing this lens out for the last 6 months or so, and I have to say, this is quite the impressive lens. And I know what many of you may be asking,
Alex, many of your videos you've mentioned that the 15-35 f2.8 is the lens that got you to come over to Canon to begin with. Why do you have the f4?
Well, there's a lot of really good reasons for that. Mainly, when I go heading out with both my R5 and my R6, I have the 15-35 f2.8, which is almost religiously on my R5. Now, when I'm in my studio, the 2870 f2, which is what we're shooting on right now, is a fantastic lens. I absolutely love the 2870. It's a phenomenal lens. The only downside, I don't care that it doesn't have any image stabilization because it's always on a tripod to begin with. I mean, it's a peg of a lens. If I'm out shooting landscapes with it, it's always on a tripod, or the camera's always on a tripod. If I'm shooting video, hell yeah, I'm not going to be, I feel pretty comfortable, but the 2870 is a heavy lens. Holding it out like this is going to be tiresome. And so it's always on a tripod. But where I have a problem with the lens is that massive 95 millimeter filter size. So I don't have, as I mentioned in a video last week, I think it was, over the last 2 to 3 years, I've been shooting a lot more video. And while I have the Polar Pro Summit series, and I do have a 95 millimeter, well, as we can see right now, I have a 95 millimeter thread adapter that allows me to have various ND filters on there. But if I want a variable ND, I don't own one. And so I've been eyeballing when the 14-35 came out. At first I'm like, f4, I wasn't sure about it. But then there's a handful of things that really stood out about this lens, and I figured it would be a great lens to review. And then when I head out for those times where I want to have both my R5 with me and I want to have my R6 with me, I can have the 14-35 on the R6. It's a 77 millimeter filter thread, so it's going to be easier for me to, well, I have filters that will fit it. I have variable filters that will fit on this particular lens itself there. So there's a lot of reasons that got me to pick this thing up. And so in this video, I'm going to share with you things that I absolutely love about this lens. I'm going to share with you things that I don't care for, and there's not many. For the most part, this is an absolutely stunning lens. I really get it. I know a handful of landscape photographers that got rid of their 2.8 lens to pick up this thing. And at first I'm like, ooh, why would you do that? But as you'll find out here in a moment, when I'm shooting landscapes, if I'm just shooting photos only, man, I don't even remember the last time that I shot anywhere near 2.8. The only time I'm shooting 2.8 is when I'm out shooting video. And so, but when I'm shooting photos, never do I have it in 2.8 unless I'm like doing macro or something up close or something like that. But anyways, so that's what this video is going to break down. We're going to break down what I like about it. We're going to have a little narrative talking about how I use the lens. And as always, guys, look, we put these videos together to help you make informed decisions. Many of you that may be picking up your EOS R camera, your first R camera, and you may be deciding what lenses to pick up. Now, of course, this one is going to be very attractive for a variety of reasons. It's lighter, it's less expensive by, I think it's like $1,000. But the downside is it's an f4 versus 2.8. In this video, we're going to break down a few things of what I think and how I use this lens myself. Boy, Boy, I had to spit that out. But going back to where I was leading a moment ago, if you find some value with this video, friend, if you could do me a favor, and like I ask you every single video, hell, if you could hit that like button, crush the hell out of it, because at the end of the day, when YouTube takes a look at how people perceive or engage with videos, if there's a like, it certainly does help with the whole YouTube algorithm. That said, my friends, pull up a seat and yeah, come on, let's go. Let's begin our look at this lens by going over some of the specs and features that it offers. Okay, friends, I'm going to keep the 14-35 on the Canon R5 for kind of a sense of scale, size, and all that other fun stuff. And I'm going to keep the 15-35 here as well. Actually, I'll spin this thing around so again we can get a sense of... So actually, you can see right there, there's quite a bit of size difference there, but I'm going to keep this in frame here because I may reference this a little bit here, covering over these specs and features. Okay, so starting off, the max aperture is f4. Now, the minimum aperture is f22. Now, guys, you get an angle of view from 63 degrees to 114 degrees. Now, that extra 1 millimeter that you get over the 15-35, that really does make a difference. Now, the filter size on this is 77 millimeters. Now, I do wish it was 82 millimeters, and I'm going to explain, or I'll go more into that here in just a moment. Now, this is a L series lens, so you get upgraded optics, and there's weather sealing in this thing as well. And there's 16 elements in 12 groups. Now, something worth pointing out with this lens as well, you get 5.5 stops of image stabilization. Now, this goes up to 7 stops when you use the lens with a stabilized camera body. Now, as you can see here, this is, I mean, it's small. It's 3.3 by 3.9 inches in size. This keeps rolling on me here, which is one of the best features if you ask me. Come on, get over here. Now, it's also lightweight at 1.2 pounds as well. So, I mean, it really doesn't weigh much at all. Now, the price tag is $1,649 at the moment. At the time of filming, it's $1,649. So, again, I mean, this thing is absolutely amazing. I absolutely love the size of this thing. So, as you can see, based on these specs, this is really a nice balance between the L series features as well as a lower price tag. Now, the lower price tag, of course, because the f4 aperture. And so in all reality, guys, for me, this lens offers the best of both worlds. And speaking of which, let's shift gears here a little bit and talk about how I use this lens itself. Going back to one of the earlier statements where, as I mentioned, I have the 15-35 2.8, which is, again, 9 out of 10 times, it's, actually, it's even more than that. Almost all the time, it is on my R5. But there are times where I will use this lens over the 15-35. Now, when I'm heading out and I'm going on a hike and I'm just backpacking and I'm concerned about weight, considering this thing weighs a lot, it's a lot lighter than the 2.8. And I'll put the specs up on the screen here someplace. But this is substantially lighter. So if I'm going out and I want to shoot landscapes, again, as I mentioned earlier, I don't even remember. Granted, this is the widest this is f4. Most of the time when I'm shooting landscapes, conservatively speaking, I'm usually between f8, f11. Maybe during a sunny day, I jump up to f16 or so, but most of the time, I'm usually pegged between f8 and f11. Then there's times where, like this, if I know I'm going to be out shooting and kind of running and gunning and holding a camera like this. Now, granted, while the f2.8 isn't terribly heavy, but if you're holding a camera out like this for a prolonged period of time, I don't care how much you work out, this thing gets heavy. So with this f4, now granted, when I'm shooting video most of the time, I do like that big wide aperture, but I found that the f4 really isn't all terribly bad. I mean, the video quality does look pretty good out of this, and at the end of the day, I'm able to hold this up a lot longer than I can with the 2.8. And, well, My arms really appreciate that. Then lastly, for the times where I'm heading out with both my R5 and the R6, and I simply want to have a larger ecosystem of filters to be able to use on the lens that is on the R6. Again, I only have a few options, or actually, I have one option for the 2870, and that is, as we discussed a moment ago, the Polar Pro Summit, with the massive 95mm filter adapter on there, but I don't have any variable NDs for this here. So this is a 6-stop, and then I have a 3 and a 10, I think I have. Going with the 14-35 here, again, this is a 77mm, so I have simply a lot more options. There's a lot more filter options inside my camera bag readily available to toss on this. Now, there are certainly a lot of things that I like about this lens, but is it perfect? Oh, hell no. I would have to say, in terms of best features, there are 3 things that I like most about this lens. All right, I feel like broken record syndrome here, but the size and weight are absolutely fantastic. This is a great option for running and gunning, or if you're like me and shoot a lot of landscapes, this lens is ideal for really shedding unwanted weight. Now, the 14-35 focal range is really perfect, and as I said earlier, that extra 1mm reach that you get over the 15-35 2.8 is so nice. And you might not think that 1mm really makes a difference, but friends, it really opens up so many possibilities in terms of composition and framing. Plus, it's versatile focal range that you can use for pretty much everyday shooting of landscapes, cityscapes, portraits, hell, you name it. And you get plenty of L-series amenities, as I mentioned a moment ago. You get the weather sealing, the image stabilization, the upgraded optics, and so much more for the price tag, well, for a lower price tag than the 15-35 2.8, which again is a big plus. I would also like to add, in terms of performance, this lens is a absolute champ. It's sharp, produces nice colors, nice contrast, and does a great job of controlling chromatic aberration. But no lens is perfect, and there are a few things that I don't like about this lens. Now, there's quite a bit of vignetting with this lens. You'll find vignetting throughout the focal length, not just at the extremes. Now, it also does, when you compare these two lenses, for example, it does feel a little plasticky, and I'm not saying it feels cheap though. This is a L-series lens. I mean, it does what it's supposed to. Now, I mentioned earlier, I said this had a 77mm filter thread, and I know this is nitpicking a little bit, but I really wish it had the 82mm thread instead. That way, I could simply swap filters directly from this lens over to here. Otherwise I'm using a step-up ring, which isn't the end of the world, but of course I'm nitpicking and I'm just pointing out my 2 cents of cons, big or small. Now, additionally, the f4 might be a buzzkill, but as I mentioned earlier, for my landscape work, I'm always nearly religiously always around f8 to f11. And for the times where I really need that extra speed, well, I just toss on the 15-35 and I have that 2.8 available. Which brings me to another point. Now, during this video, I have mentioned the 15-35 2.8 a handful of times, but you might have noticed that I really haven't gone into much detail on how it compares to the 14-35. And friends, that is for a good reason. In the upcoming weeks, I'm going to be doing a very specific comparison video on that very topic. But what I will say is this: the 15-35 2.8 was one of the lenses, and again, I've said this numerous times, that convinced me to make the move from Nikon over to Canon. When this lens came out, Canon absolutely crushed it with the addition of lenses in its lineup, like the 14-35 f4. Despite having the cons, this lens really does crush it. So I have to say, this has really been a good 6 months with this lens. It really has proved to be a valuable addition to my kit, and really has turned into one of my favorite lenses to use. Now, if you're ready to upgrade your lens but don't want to spend the money for a 15-35 2.8, the 14-35 f4 is really a fantastic option. And what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to put a link in the description below if you want to pick up one of these. And now, with my 6-month review of this lens out of the way, let's shift gears here and talk about our current giveaway. We have 3 excellent prizes up for the grabs this month. We have a Peak Design 35-liter travel duffel bag. We have a Peak Design camera strap, and of course, a $100 Amazon gift card. Now, as always, entering the giveaway is really simple. Step 1, like this video, subscribe to our channel. Step 2, leave a comment below. In fact, the more of our videos that you watch and leave a comment on, the more chance that you have to win. So get watching some of the videos and leave some comments. Step 3, register on Photography Talk and introduce yourself in the forum. Now, if you happen to register on the site during one of the last giveaways, you're still eligible to win. But as I keep saying over and over again, swinging by, say hello, post some new photos. We would love to see you. And friend, that is it. For complete details on the giveaway, including how to register on Photography Talk or